You want to live normally, eat good food, buy things you like, plan vacations, maybe hit the gym, maybe make money. Basically, the usual human stuff. But there's one problem. You're going to die. Not someday abstractly, but for real, physically, unavoidable. And here's the weird thing. Your brain knows it, but at the same time, it doesn't believe it. You can say everyone dies, but inside, it feels like it won't happen to you. Like death happens to other people, somewhere far away. Not now, not anytime soon. It's not stupidity, it's how the brain works. Today we're going to break down the big question. Why can't your brain accept your own death? And spoiler, without this glitch, you wouldn't even function properly. Let's go. The brain is a survival machine. Its main job for millions of years was simple. Don't die today. Not building a career, not finding the meaning of life, not getting spiritually enlightened, just staying alive. That's why the brain is optimized for action, not philosophy. If the brain was constantly aware of the fact that you're going to die, you'd lose motivation, fall into anxiety, avoid risks, stop planning for the future. And without planning, the future doesn't get built. So evolution picked a better strategy. Ignore the inevitability of death on an emotional level. Logically, you know. Emotionally, you don't. All right, let's move on. There's a concept called cognitive dissonance of mortality. In simple terms, you know you're going to die, but you can't imagine yourself dead. Try it right now. Picture the world without you. Not funerals, not some movie scene, just you disappearing. Your consciousness breaks, because imagining yourself gone doesn't work. Any imagination requires a viewer, and if you're dead, there's no one left to observe. It's like trying to see your back without a mirror. Technically possible to describe, but impossible to feel. Death, in the brain, is stored as an abstract concept, not a personal event. Example. You know that people die from diseases. You know there are accidents. You've seen the news. But deep down, you think, not me. It's not stupidity. It's a protection mechanism. If the brain perceived death as a close reality every day, the level of anxiety would be paralyzing. Imagine you're going to the store and thinking, I might die on the way. You wouldn't function. So the brain puts death into the folder, someday, later. Like that gym subscription you'll cancel next Monday. There's another reason for this. The brain builds a model of self, a sense of I, and this model always assumes continuity. When you plan a vacation, your career, your relationships, your purchases, you automatically assume you'll exist in the future. The brain can't make plans without including itself in them. That's why the thought of death conflicts with the basic structure of consciousness. It's like a program that has to delete itself while running. The system crashes. There's an interesting concept here called temporal discounting. The further in time an event is, the less real it seems. Example. Exam tomorrow. Stress. Exam next year. I'll deal with it later. Death is almost always perceived as way off in the future. Even older people often still feel like there's more time ahead. The brain is optimized for immediate threats, hunger, cold, danger, not for philosophical inevitabilities. That's why death doesn't feel urgent. It's like canceling that gym subscription again. People also have optimistic bias. In other words, I drive carefully. This won't happen to me. I'm healthy. Even when the stats are the same. This isn't just self-confidence, it's a built-in function of the psyche. Optimism increases motivation, risky but beneficial actions, social activity. Without it, people would be too cautious, and overly cautious ancestors didn't survive as well. There's a scientific theory called terror management theory. The gist is, recognizing death causes existential terror. To reduce it, the brain creates buffers. Culture, achievements, relationships, legacy. When you work out, build a career, buy a car, develop a brand, part of the motivation is an unconscious desire to leave a mark. Not just die and be forgotten. Even that gym subscription is sometimes about this. Like, I'll be stronger. I control life. Daily life is a good example. Think about your typical day. You eat, work, scroll your phone, plan weekends. If the thought, I'm going to die, was constantly active, you wouldn't be able to do any of it. So the brain filters information, like noise cancellation in headphones. Death is background noise. Life is the active signal. Young people experience this effect more strongly. Why? Because the brain is still developing. The prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for risk assessment, doesn't fully mature until adulthood. That's why teenagers and young adults take more risks, feel invincible, underestimate dangers. It's not stupidity, it's biology. Evolutionarily, young people were supposed to explore, take risks, expand territories. Without risk, progress wouldn't happen. So this is all part of the process. When a person experiences real danger, like a serious illness, an accident, or losing someone, death becomes real. But over time, the brain pulls back again. It's like the emotional reset after a workout. Muscles hurt, then adapt. There's an interesting phenomenon where people who've had near-death experiences often start living more actively. Why? Because death stops being abstract. It becomes a real event. But after a while, the brain again pulls away. Because without protection, the psyche would burn out. Culture also helps the brain cope. Society creates rituals, funerals, religions, philosophies. These are tools for processing fear. They give meaning. Meaning reduces terror. Even secular people use cultural constructs like, "I'll leave a legacy." It's important to live well. Kids are a continuation. These are psychological buffers. Here's the paradox. To live fully, the brain has to partially ignore death. But to make wise decisions, you need to remember it. The balance is tricky. Too much awareness, anxiety. Too little, recklessness. So most people live somewhere in between, not thinking too deeply, like with finances, like with health, like with that gym subscription. But here's the practical takeaway. Your brain doesn't accept your death not because you're special, but because, greater than otherwise, you wouldn't be able to live properly. It's a built-in function, like autopilot. But sometimes it's useful to remind yourself of the end. Not dramatically, but realistically. Like, time is limited. That makes choices important. Let's quickly run through everything. The brain is a survival machine. It can't imagine its own absence. Death is stored as an abstract concept. The self model assumes the future. Distant events seem unreal. Optimism is an inbuilt function. Culture reduces fear. The illusion of control helps the psyche. Experience makes death more real. But the brain pulls back again. The balance between ignoring and accepting death is normal. Acceptance of mortality enhances life quality. And that's the takeaway. You're going to die. I'm going to die. We all are. The brain does everything it can so we can keep living in spite of that. The irony is that it's the limited time that makes life precious. If this video was helpful, subscribe, because, well, we don't have all the time in the world. And yeah, cancel that gym subscription already.